Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye sports fans, to Punting is Winning, our first video episode. I don't know if we can classify this as a new season or we just continue on how we were, but this will be the first attempt at video. We'll see how it goes. I know I've got a face for radio more than video, but let's see how it goes.
Well, I'm excited. I'm ready to get this going.
Yeah, I know you've been wanting me to do it for quite a while now, so yeah. I've been kind of hesitant about it just simply because I just don't know how it's going to go. But we'll see.
I just want to open up new avenues for us, and we can reach different listeners. And I know YouTube is it's really expanded a lot in the last several years. So I think we just had to take advantage of this.
Yep. Yeah, I knew eventually we'd have to go do it. So
yeah,
I've been preparing myself mentally and on the background with the producing of this. So that's the bigger issue for me, is just the producing, the mixing, and getting it out with quality content.
You do a good job. No question about it. So. You do a good job. I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't know how to do it, first of all.
It's definitely become a lot easier over the course of the 21 episodes we put out so far, at least on the audio side. And we do still plan to put this out as an audio broadcast as well. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, same place we've been putting them out. We're just going to dabble into the visual media now and put some stuff out on YouTube and probably put some short clips on TikTok to get a little bit more exposure as well, and see if we can start growing that audience. We love to interact with people, so the more the merrier. So what do you think? Today we've got some things to talk about. You want to talk a little bit about Caitlin Clark and the start of her WNBA season. We did have a transfer come in the quarterback room in the name of Jackson Stratton out of Colorado State. Third walk-on. Kind of in a roundabout way, it was more of a trade because he came to Iowa and Tommy Baholski went to Colorado State. So
kind of felt like a trade.
We traded walk-ons. Yeah, we basically felt like we traded walk-ons. But, I good size, 6'4", 195. Probably needs to put a little bit more meat on his bones. It sounds like from a 6'4", 195 perspective, he may be more of a running type of quarterback. Prototypically your 6'4" guys that are drop back passers are more in the 220 to 225 range at that point. But he does have 3 years of eligibility left, so there's some time to put some meat on his bones and get him built up. At this point, I don't see him having. I see him having a legit shot to try to get on the field. I think that's always there with Iowa. I know a lot of people have said in the past that Kirk Ferentz is very much an old school type of guy, that once you're the starter and the incumbent, that it's very hard to displace you. But I think he's shown over the years that that's not necessarily always the case. We had the Jake Rudock, Jake Rudock? No. Yeah, it was the Jake Rudock and CJ Beathard issue where CJ replaced him after the year. We also had the Rick Stanzi, Jake Christensen in 2008. So, he has shown the flexibility to go to the backup when he needs to. Now, we know that we haven't seen it in the last 2 or 3 years, but I don't think he had the talent that was either. I think those guys do have talent. Don't get me wrong. They've obviously got talent enough to be able to play at a Division I level. That's way better than I ever could be. But either they didn't grasp the system well enough, or they were just misevaluated on how good they thought they were going to be, and have not produced in practice, have not had the ability to get on the field because they just don't look that good in practice. They're not making the right reads, and you can't put a guy out there, which he did last year, that turned the ball over a lot. But I wonder if it's the case, people can say, well, you put a guy out there, turn the ball over a lot, but how do we know that the guy behind him didn't want to turn it over more?
Well, that was the whole thing with the fan base, the frustration that the fan base, you kept hearing it in social media. Is like, why can't we find someone else? Why can't we put someone other than Deacon in there? Deacon's a turnover machine. He can't move. He can't throw the ball well. What do we got behind him? We got to try somebody else. Well, that was the frustration of the fan base. And, Kirk knows best. He's the one out there every day. He knows the players. You have to kind of a little bit trust in what he does. Sometimes he's wrong. I mean, we've noticed there's been times when he's been just flat out wrong. But you just have to kind of trust in the system and trust that he knows his players better than the fan base does.
Yeah.
Right or wrong.
None of us are perfect. We've all made mistakes. No. We've all misevaluated things. If you're married, you misevaluate things every day because,
well, you hear about it a lot
you can't
more anyway.
read things. But the point being is we just didn't, I don't think we had anybody behind him that was going to be any better. You go from a Deacon who was very one-dimensional, couldn't run. Actually, he was very half-dimensional even because he couldn't really throw that well either. You go to a very one-dimensional quarterback with Marco, who is not able to really throw. We saw that in the bowl game, but he could run. But if you start to allow those defenses to just say, oh, well, I know he's just a runner. I really don't have to play tight defense. Now you're going to eliminate that run. He's not going to have those avenues to run through. So, I think in that sense, that was why it was looked at if that's not as good of an option. Deacon has a better arm. Accuracy with the two of them, probably the same. We talked about it when we went to the spring practice. The knock on Marco was accuracy and arm strength. I didn't necessarily see an issue with that while we were there. I think that has gotten better from what people have said it has been based on what I saw. And again, I'm just seeing one snippet, one snapshot of an hour and a half of one day of practice. But to me, I did not see the issues of lack of arm strength and lack of accuracy. Now, I did see a lack of confidence in reads, slower reads. I saw that from Deacon as well. So what's the trade-off? I guess at that point, you have to say, who's doing the best in practice? Because they're both basically similar in game.
Who's getting the most opportunity?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is Marco was getting the most opportunities with the 2s and the 3s because that gave him more reps, regardless of personnel. Now, I get it. The difference in 2s and 3s and the 1s can be very astronomical at times. That number 3 left tackle versus that number 1 left tackle. You may have 3.5 seconds to get the ball out with the number 1 left tackle. You may have a second to get the ball out with the number 3. But what it does teach you is to read through your progressions faster because you have to. So,
and you're going up against Iowa's elite defense every practice. If you're
exactly
even not even the 1s, even the 2s are going to be pretty solid on defense.
The 2s
That's
on
one
Iowa
of the things
would
Iowa
be
has.
Top 40 defense by themselves.
Absolutely. I understand. Agree.
The 3s would be in the top 100 for sure.
Iowa does one thing very well, and that's defense.
Well, and special teams.
Yeah, that too.
As we say, punting is winning.
Punting is winning.
So, anyway, you wanted to talk a little bit about Caitlin Clark, and then we want to discuss the released BIG10 football schedule and some things that bothered us a little bit about that. I don't know. Bothered might not even be the right word. Just kind of things that made you go, especially when you think, and I'm not a Nebraska apologizer by any means, because Western neighbors are our arch enemies as far as I'm concerned. But these 4 new teams did get a different path than what Nebraska did, by far. But we'll talk about that. I'm going to let you talk about your topic with Caitlin Clark and how she's started out her WNBA season. I did love seeing her drop 30 a couple nights ago. It was really nice. Give girl 4 days off and let her rest up a little bit. She's going to go back to being herself.
Yeah, that's one thing about Caitlin Clark. You have to. I think people have to understand that she's played 39 college games and then turned around in just a few days. Was drafted, had to go to New York for the draft. Spent time on SNL. She's been on the go basically every day since early November, and probably even before that when practice actually started. So there is I would think there's a level of fatigue You may not see it right off in the games, but over time, there's a level of fatigue that she's going to encounter if she hasn't already. So having this many games, 12 games in 20 days, it is really taxing on a person, especially at the pro level when you're running up and down the court. And she's getting a lot of minutes too. It's not like she's just doing 25 minutes out of 40. She's doing 38, 39. One game, she didn't even get out at all. So it's just one of them situations where she's going to have games where she's 30 points and other games when she's 3 points. And it has a lot to do with the defense. It's the defenses of each one of these WNBA teams. They put their best player on her, their best defensive player on her every time. And then when they get a chance and push her into the corners, then they double on her. She is seeing someone in her face pretty much 94 feet.
Yeah.
No more evidence than the day that the girl from, I think it was Seattle, that was taking two shots on a foul shot, and after the first shot, she ran over and started guarding her. She didn't even have enough. She just felt like she needed to guard her. She hadn't even taken her second shot yet. So, I mean, that's the kind of emphasis that the defenses are putting on Caitlin. So, with that in mind, she's getting her 30 occasionally. She's gotten 2 30-point games. That's the first. I don't think Candace Parker, I saw, was the last person to do 30 points twice in a rookie season. She did 33 games. So, Caitlin's done it in 12. And there's a possibility she could do 30 a couple more times, if not maybe a little more than that, depending on, if she's getting some time off. Now, the Olympic team has made their selections, and Caitlin was left off. I think she may have been listed as an alternate, but she wasn't there for the tryouts. She was playing college basketball at the time, so there's one strike against her. 2, she's played all these games. She's tired. I think it's a good thing, and I'm probably going to fly in the face of a lot of people that think that leaving her off the Olympic team is a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing for her. She'll have more time. She's young. She'll have at least 2 more Olympics probably to get through before her career is over, unless she plays like Diana Taurasi, plays into her 40s. But I think that's a good thing. She needs a little break. She needs some time to acclimate more. She didn't get much of a training camp. So to have her off the Olympic team is not a bad thing in my book. So what are your thoughts? Do you think she should be on the Olympic team?
I have some slightly different thoughts. Do I think she should be on there? I don't have an issue with her not being on there. The only issue I would have is when you are a struggling business, and let's be honest, until she's joined that league, that was a struggling business, and it still is. Don't get me wrong. But you see what she does. They played Washington the other night. They had to move it from Washington's normal arena to, I think, where the Wizards play. That holds over 20,000. They had 20,000 people in that
20,330, I think it was, something like that.
That was for a 2-9 team and an 0-10 team. The NBA Finals between the Mavericks and the Celtics only brought in 19,000. So there's a golden goose right there in Caitlin Clark. And the Angel Reese apologists, all these other apologists could say, well, it's not just her. There was no Angel Reese at that game. There was no Angel Reese playing in that game. There was no the Cameron Brink. There was, it was Caitlin Clark's show. And that brought the largest viewing audience in how many years? Or was it ever for a WNBA
27?
game? And, it's because of her.
Absolutely.
And
no question.
Who would have gone, if it wasn't for her, who would have gone to a game between a 2-9 team and a 0-10 team? Not very many people.
Well, here's an example. The Chicago Sky played the night before in Washington, the same as Indiana did on a Saturday. Chicago played in Washington on a Friday night, the night before, and they only had 10,000 at that game. So they doubled the same. They doubled the amount of attendance, and it's Caitlin Clark. It's a Caitlin Clark effect. It's not Angel Reese. I mean, yeah, there's some Angel Reese fans out there, but they're not buying the tickets like they are for Caitlin Clark. No way.
Well, their argument is she's got more followers. Well,
Caitlin's not a big social media person.
No, she's not. So, But yeah, I agree. I think the opportunity was missed by the Olympic Committee to have her on the team to boost ratings
Viewership.
for the viewership ratings for that sport. But I totally get there's a ton of WNBA players that are good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They beat me in a one-on-one any day, even when I was in my prime.
Me
So
too.
I'm not arguing that the people that did get selected shouldn't have gone. You know, maybe Brittany Griner, who hasn't played in 8 months. You know, that one, I think, okay, whatever. Yeah, that should be there. But you know, I've read the argument that it was they didn't want to aggravate the Iowa fan base or the Caitlin Clark fan base when it would become very apparent that on a SAC team like that she may not get a whole lot of minutes. Well, I don't think she cares. I think in that situation, she's going to look at that as, I'm on an Olympic team. I'll put out when I get out there, even if it's only 6-7 minutes a game. I can take the rest of this time to rest. And I'm still resting my legs. I'm not spending as much time on the court, but I'm also representing my country, and I'm also getting a gold medal. More than likely. You know, so I think they lost that opportunity, their cash cow, so to speak, by not having their cash cow in there. It's just, it seems a little.
I just have a feeling this isn't over. I just have a feeling this is not over. I have a feeling that somebody's going to either drop off the team and she's going to get on there, or there's going to be a behind the scenes outcry about it and she's going to be put on the team just to appease. Maybe. I don't know that, but I personally would rather see her just stay in Indiana, get rested, get healthy, get ready for the second half of the season and perform at a very high level and quiet the naysayers.
Like the Caitlin we know.
Yeah. And she looked good the other night. She hit 7 3-pointers. That's also an NBA rookie record, a WNBA rookie record. Tied. I shouldn't say she got it on her own, but she's tied it. So she's doing good things. And again, she's doing things that aren't great either. You know, the turnovers are getting up there. She's had several days. You know, when that first game, she had 10 turnovers. It's just part of it is getting used to your teammates and knowing their capabilities. She had the opportunity to work 4 years with some of the kids at Iowa. 2 years was with Hannah Stolke and practiced daily with them. Got familiar with them. Knew what their strengths and weaknesses were. She hasn't had that familiarity and strength and weaknesses issues with the players that she's working with now. She hasn't had that time, and they will get better, and they will find a rhythm.
The turnovers will go down.
Yes.
The assists. This is the part that aggravates me. It's the turnovers. Yeah, but I don't put those all on her. I mean, you know, let's say she gets 7 turnovers a game. I might put 3 of them on her, 4 of them on her teammates, not be able to catch the ball. What bugs me is when she does give you a perfect pass, and then you can't make a layup. Yeah, how many shots have been missed that should have been assists? She should have 100 assists by now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Based on that. So it's just that's the frustrating part to me. Like I said, the turnovers will come down once they start to get used to each other and start to understand that she sees things quicker than most people, and you've got to be ready. And I think that Beck Bainley is the only one that has really kind of figured that out.
Yeah, right. She's the Hannah Stolke of their team. She runs ahead.
But she's hurt.
Yeah, she is hurt. But hopefully she'll be back soon. But she's doing well. Don't get me wrong. Caitlin's doing well. She's rookie of the month this last month. You know, I saw ESPN's rankings of the rookies. I just kind of went, yeah, whatever. And that's not, you know, I'm sure they take a lot of things into account that I don't. But if I'm running through the eye test, it's Caitlin number 1, Cameron Brink probably number 2. I put Kate Martin probably in the top 7 or 8. You know, to put Caitlin 6th on that, just, you know, it kind of loses credibility in my book.
Well, that's a situation where you want her. You want to say that, so you want her to be back. You're just hoping. I disagree with a lot of that. You can't say she's the 6th best rookie and then say she's rookie of the month. 6th best rookie got rookie of the month? Huh. Kind of makes it seem like that's probably the best rookie, considering it's the first month.
Yeah.
But anyhow. we need to move on from that. So we got a long discussion here about college football schedule coming up. Yeah.
Now, I want to preface this a little bit by saying that this is going to be the dive week to week on the Big Ten schedule, but there's going to be, in a later podcast, we're going to dive into Iowa's schedule in very detail. So if you're wanting to get Iowa detail on the Big Ten schedule, you may have to just hold on for that one. We'll come back to that a little bit closer to the start of the season, and then we'll break down every team in detail. So if you're wanting something like that today, we're just going to hit basically all these 17 other teams. We will mention Iowa occasionally on those, but for the most part, this is not going to be an Iowa deep dive.
And this really isn't going to be a huge deep dive into their schedule either. This is just observations that we have noticed in scheduling, some maybe favoritism being granted. I mentioned that earlier, and again, I'm not a Nebraska apologist, but in this sense, I do have to feel bad for Nebraska. When they came into the Big Ten, and I know a lot of people will say, it's Nebraska, they were running their mouths about, we're just going to walk from the Big 8, we're going to go to the Big 10, we're going to dominate that just like we did. Well, they found out that wasn't the case, and they found that out pretty quick. And the Big 10 basically made them find that out by saying, you're going to play the toughest schedule that we can put out there. And you're going to play Ohio State. You're going to play Michigan. You're going to play Penn State. You're obviously going to play Iowa. You're obviously going to play Wisconsin because they're on your side of the divisions. At that point in time, when they came in, those were the toughest teams in the Big Ten.
Oddly enough, still are.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, yeah. You get some Michigan State in there, was pretty good at that time too. They kind of fallen off. But I think Michigan was a little less caliber than Michigan State at that time when they came in about 2010, 11, I think was when they jumped in. But they didn't do them any favors. It was not we're going to ease you into this conference realignment. You're going to play the best of the best, and we'll see how good you really think you are. And I think they found out really quick. They had a couple of decent years early because they had some talent. They had brought in that Big 12 style that we weren't used to in the Big 10. And as soon as Big 10 teams adjusted to it, you could stop them pretty easily. And so they found that was not going to be the case, that they weren't going to be able to just walk right in here, be top tier. Penn State thought the same thing. It took them a long time to get there. So people just don't understand that the Big Ten is a different entity when it comes to football. When you look at it, comparing it to other conferences, other power conferences, the SEC, the old Pac-12 with the original teams in it, they're still there right now. They're not in the Big Ten yet. The Big 12 and the ACC. There's a different style of play that's played in the Midwest. It is still that 3 yards in a cloud of dust at times. And there's a heavy focus on defense. And, people like to see these games. Somebody made a comment about how Oklahoma and Texas Tech was such a great game one year because it ended up 66-59. I'm like, is that really a great game? I mean, yeah, you got to see a lot of scoring, but I like to see a little bit of defense too. To me, a 14-7 game is just as exciting as a 66-59 game because there's another part of that team that's performing at an optimal level. Offense doesn't even have to be at an optimal level if the defense is subpar. Offense has to be great if the defense is great. And to get 20 to 24 points against a team like Iowa or Alabama, who has a strong defense, or Ohio State, Georgia, that's an accomplishment. That's like basically blowing them out. If you can get 21 to 24 points on, and that's just the reality that those teams, when they come into this conference, are going to have to learn. And sometimes they have to learn it the hard way. Sometimes, they talk really big show and this and that. And don't think that the scheduling people don't listen to that, because they do. Because the one team that talked a big show from the Pac-12 this year was USC. And I think of all the 4 teams, they probably have the crappiest schedule of the 4. But we'll pull up
Crappiest from what standpoint, though?
the fact of who they have to play.
They don't play anybody.
Okay, then maybe
their schedule is probably the weakest of the bunch. They don't even play past. They don't play east of the Rocky Mountains past October the 19th. To be honest, I think the most difficult schedule of those 4 teams is Oregon, and we'll go over that at the end. But I don't know. I don't think USC schedule is. I think it's cake. I mean, you can take a warm weather team and take them out and throw them in the cold of the Midwest in November, and you're going to have a definite advantage as a cold weather team. But you take a cold weather team and you take them out to USC at 75, at 78 degrees, who's got the advantage? The cold weather team? No. The warm weather team? Maybe, but not much. It's easier to play in the warm than it is to play in the cold, I can tell you that. Especially if you're a team that doesn't play in the cold, like USC does. They don't play in the cold, and they won't this year. And that's unfortunate. That's the whole part of the whole thing that I think is you lobbed them a softball. Yeah, you have to play Michigan, but
I think
it's early.
The entire Big 12 a softball, or the 4 teams that came in a softball.
Right. That's what I meant. The 4 teams, they got the softball.
Yeah.
But I don't think either one of the 4 of them really got a hardball either. I don't think any of those 4 teams really, we'll get into the schedule, but if you just watch the schedule. Just watch. Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA. You watch. And you're going to see something develop as we get through this. And we'll try to point it out to you. So let's go ahead and get with game 1 or week 1.
Week 1, I think the big games for week 1 in the Big 10.
I'd have to go Penn State versus. I'd have to go Penn State versus West Virginia on Saturday, but then I'd go LSU USC on Sunday for sure.
Yeah, and I would say.
Other than that, I don't see a whole lot.
Maybe North Carolina, Minnesota.
Well, it's in Minnesota, so they'll have to get a little revenge from last year. But I don't know if North Carolina is going to be as good once they lost Drake May. They're going to be looking for a quarterback. Yeah. Minnesota, of course, is too because they lost Kalec Manis, so they're going to need to get that quarterback room situated too. No, that one's kind of a toss-up to me.
So I think those would be the 3 games. And if I had to make a prediction, I'd probably say I'd probably still go North Carolina winning. And I would take Penn State to beat West Virginia.
Yeah, I'll take Penn State too. And I'll take Minnesota actually because I just think because of the home field advantage would be the only reason.
And I'm going to take LSU to beat at USC.
I agree with you on that, but I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I think it's going to be because USC is going to have to replace quarterback. Mm-hmm. I still think it'll be high-scoring, like a 31-28 type of deal. But I'm going to go with LSU to win that one.
Yeah, LSU may play a little bit more defense than USC does, unless something's changed in the offseason. That's why I'm taking LSU, and it is a neutral site game.
But it's first game.
Yeah.
And that might even help the defense more too. Maybe I'm way off.
That's true.
Sometimes when you think it's going to be one way or the other, it's usually the opposite.
So let's go down to week number 2. Games of note in week number 2. Duke and Northwestern, usually an interesting game. Texas, Michigan will be very good. Iowa State. I can see Michigan State being a pretty good game. Kansas and Illinois.
Kansas and Illinois. Kansas Illinois is a game where Illinois can get them back on a revenge because if I remember, Kansas beat them pretty good last year. Then you got Colorado, Nebraska. This is an opportunity for Nebraska to get back at Colorado for that beatdown they took last year.
Ironically,
also, believe it or not,
I'll root for Colorado.
Yeah, no. Well, I don't even know if I'll root for
I know where you're
Colorado
going with this one. Boise State outwin Oregon. It's going to be a very good one.
No, I was thinking this is the time when we start the Big 10 conference schedule with Michigan State at Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go on that. We're starting the schedule early, second week of the season.
And I think this is going to be a sneaky good game here. This Boise State Oregon.
I don't know.
It is at Autzen. I mean, I feel Oregon's going to win that game.
Yeah,
but Boise State's just one of those teams that you just don't know. You can't take anything for granted. You know what I mean? It's just.
But I'm with you. I'll take Oregon.
You had them all. Yeah, I'm going to take Oregon. Yeah, I'm actually going to take Colorado to beat Nebraska. Again,
you are.
Yeah, I think that's more of my heart over my head.
I'm taking.
Not that I like Colorado, but
I'm taking Nebraska and Lincoln. Colorado's had a lot of turnover.
Yeah, I know, but Nebraska's got a lot of head cases.
And they don't start their seasons out really hot either lately.
Yeah, and honestly, neither team has a decent coach at this point, in my opinion.
People will argue with that one, but I agree with you. Prime's all talk and a lot of name and not a lot of coaching.
Yes. Yeah. And that's been proven by kids that have left. Right. What do you think, Kansas, Illinois?
I think Kansas on this one, only because they've got a lot coming back. I like their coach. I like their scheme. Illinois, I don't think they've really upgraded since last year, so I'm going to go with Kansas there.
And I'm going to go with Illinois because they're at home. I think they have a better defense. Again, going on last year, I think it's going to be a better defense. That Kansas, Kansas. That's where I always look at that Big 12 stuff and think, okay, how did these teams do against the elite defenses of the Big 12? Which, honestly, the only elite defense of the Big 12 was Iowa State. So how do you compare how they did there? Did they beat Iowa State? Kansas did, didn't they? But Kansas State did not.
Kansas did. Kansas State did not. That was the game that Abu Sama went nuts against Kansas State in the snow.
Yeah. I mean, I have this as a toss-up. I'm going to go Illinois just based on they're at home.
Okay. I think it's a toss-up too, but I'm going to go with Kansas.
Michigan State, Maryland?
I don't... Maryland just gut reaction. Close game. Defensive game. Maryland's replacing a quarterback also. So they're going to have
Michigan State's replacing most of the team.
Exactly why I picked Maryland to win.
Yeah, I would go with Maryland as well, mainly because they're at home. And I just don't know enough about Michigan State yet. Time will tell on that one. We will go ahead and do the Iowa State since it is a rivalry game. Let's check it out. It is one of the games we got. I think Iowa's a better team.
Better defense.
Better coach.
Better special teams.
It's going to be a closer game like it usually is.
Always is.
I would love to go back to the Hayden Fry days of just beating them 59-3, but I think those days are gone because I think there's a lot more parity in college football as it is. Let's do Texas, Michigan.
Texas in the SEC now, so I'm going to go with the home team only because it's the home team.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Texas. I
think it's a toss-up.
Quarterback. You got a new quarterback at Michigan, new coaching staff as well.
Yep.
You got established players in Texas. I have to go with Texas because Michigan didn't lose a lot on the national championship.
They're going to break Michigan's winning streak.
Somebody needs to.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily want it to be Texas, but
no, I don't want it to be an SEC school. How's that?
No. Yeah. All right. So shall we move on to week 3? By the way, week 2 had Purdue and UCLA as the bye team that week. Week 3, big games are Alabama, Wisconsin, Oregon State playing in the Civil War, Washington State in the Apple Cup, and after that,
UNI at Nebraska. Good for little Northern Iowa to go to play Nebraska. I don't think it's going to end well for them, but it's nice to see them get out there and play a Big Ten school again. They used to play Iowa occasionally, Iowa State all the time, but now they're going to venture west and see the land of the Huskers.
And here's a game that might be really interesting: Indiana UCLA, the only conference game on the schedule that week. Yeah, I think that's got potential because neither one of them are that good of teams. So it's got to be the potential of who's bad is going to win, and it's going to give us a better idea of what some of these teams are like, and they start seeing conference stuff.
When I look at those four teams coming into the Big Ten, Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC, I see Washington and UCLA being the bottom 2 of those 4. Obviously, I think Oregon's the cream of the crop of those 4, and then USC right below them closely. And I see Washington probably being even a little bit worse than UCLA. Maybe you can flip-flop those 2. I just don't see anything out of either one of those 2. Washington lost so much. They lost their coaching staff. They lost the majority of their team. They lost a quarterback that was basically was one of the top 10 picks of the NFL draft. And it's hard to replace that. Will they be salty? I'm sure they'll be decent. Will they be in the top 10 of probably, or 8 even of the Big Ten? I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong.
There's 18 teams. I look for them probably about, I think their ceiling's probably about 11 or 12.
Yeah.
There's a lot of established talent in the Big Ten. And when you're coming into a new conference, they seem to give them a little bit of a break, so to speak, on their scheduling, but I still don't think you still got to understand how the Big Ten works. You don't have that. In some cases, you don't have that month and a half prep for one specific team like you do for a Rose Bowl. You've got 3-4 days to prep for the next team, and you look at the Big Ten. A lot of those, you've got teams that run a traditional offense. You got teams that run a spread offense. You got teams that run this and run that. In the Pac-12, teams run basically the same offense. I don't know too many of them that do have a lot of diversity in their offense. So now you've got to prepare differently each week as opposed to, I got to prepare differently for this Big Ten team coming out here for the Rose Bowl, but I've got a month and a half to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's a kind of an eye-opening thing for them. So let's talk Alabama, Wisconsin.
Well, I think there you got to go with Alabama over Wisconsin, but it's nice to see an SEC team from the South venture north, even though it is early in the season and it's probably going to be a nice day. It's nice to see that opens the door for more SEC, ACC, Pac-12, which is not even a 12 anymore, the Big 12, to start opening up, because I think down the line you're going to start seeing, because of the playoff situation that they're going to start, you're going to start seeing these teams that, hey, I've been left off the playoff because I scheduled an FCS team instead of someone with a pulse or a Power 5. So I think you're going to start seeing more of interconference head-to-head games, the SEC versus the Big Ten, the SEC, ACC. You're going to see a lot more of that than you've seen in the past, because I think strength of schedule is going to start lending when you've got 3 teams that are right on that bubble on getting that 12th spot. They're going to look at, who did you play? Do you want to be left off because you scheduled FCS UNI, or you scheduled Georgia State? Or do you want to be in because you lost a close game to Ohio State?
Now, that's, and that goes back to the conversation we had a few weeks back about the basketball. I don't like rewarding teams a lot for scheduling tough games and just still getting beat. That's you
Well, how
still
you going to lose?
lost.
You've got it. You can't. If you don't schedule the games, you can't win it or you can't lose it.
No, and
that's
the same. That's what I'm saying. Is
that
if you've got teams that are like, let's say you've got 3 teams vying for that 12 spot, they're all 9-3, let's say, and this team went 9-3, and they scheduled 11 of their games against Power 5 teams. This team went 9-3. They scheduled 10 of their games against Power 5 teams. And this team went 9-3, and they scheduled 12 of their games against Power 5 teams. So that the one that scheduled all 12 of them lost all 3 of them to a Power 5 team. You go back and you look, did the other team's strength of schedule up to that point match up? Well, it's not going to, because they have an FCS team that they beat that is worth less points. Or 2 FCS teams, or group of 5 team, what do they say? It's worth less points. So it's just, you've got to put that point system of, take the losses out of the equation, use the wins only, right? So you say, of those 9 wins, 9 wins were against Power 5s. Okay. Well, this one, 9 wins were against Power 5s, but you also had a loss to a group of 5. So that's going to eliminate you right there. Of these 9 wins, 8 of them are, 7 of them are Power 5 wins. You have 2 group of 5 wins. You have 3 Power 5 losses. Well, who's got the better resume? The team that played 12 Power 5 teams and lost 3 games, right?
Yeah.
Because of strength of schedule. Now, if you go back and you look and you say, okay, but that group of 5 team is 10-0 or 12-0 at the end of the year and ranked in the top 10, so that throws a different light on it. If they're a playoff team and you lost to them, and the other guy lost to a Power 5 team that isn't a playoff team, that's a different story. So there's a system that has to be put in place to do that. But you're right. I agree. They're going to have to get to the point where you have to schedule more Power 5 over the Group of 5 and the FCS because of the playoffs. And this is a good start. Alabama, Wisconsin is a good start. You love to see it. And honestly, I love to see it early in the year so that Wisconsin has an extra loss. Because that can only help out.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Let's move on to the next one on here. Oregon State. Civil War in Corvallis.
Oregon all day.
Yeah, but it's going to be a closer game. Oregon State's not a bad team. It's probably going to be within 10 to 14 points.
I don't see it that way. I see it 48-20.
It's a rivalry game. It's a rivalry game. Look what Iowa can be 10 times better than Iowa State, and that game could end up 17-14. Teams get up for the rivalry games. So that's my thought is 10 to 14 point Oregon win. Let's do Washington State. In Washington. Yeah.
Toss up there for me because I don't think Washington State's that bad, and I don't think Washington's going to be near what they've been.
Weather's going to play a part in that too with a rainy day.
September 14th.
It is Pacific Northwest.
I'd still probably go. I'd probably go Washington State.
Yeah, I would too. I think they are the better team this year.
They're passing for sure team.
Oh yeah. All right, let's move on to the next week here. Bye week for those teams for Ohio State, Penn State, Rutgers, and USC. This week, games of note. We're starting to get into some conference games, some more conference games. So Illinois, Nebraska.
Biggest one I can see is Michigan, USC.
Michigan, USC,
and
Iowa,
then
Minnesota.
UCLA and LSU.
I don't know that's at Baton Rouge. LSU's going to destroy them.
Oh, I think so too. But it's nice to see that again. SEC, Big 10 going at it.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking,
And
honestly, Michigan State, Boston College.
I'm not sold on Michigan State at all. I think Michigan State will end up in the bottom. I'm talking like 15th, 16th, or 17th, maybe even 18th. I just have no confidence in what Michigan State's doing right now.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know a whole lot about I know they brought in a lot of transfers, so.
And obviously, this is a fluid situation where if teams have key injuries or play out of their minds, then this is obviously going to change. But it stands as today. This is how I would look at things. But, second week of September, Michigan State's beating two teams really badly and look really great. Then I might change my mind. But
here's the thing you got to remember about Michigan State. A lot of Michigan State's team now was what Oregon State was last year.
Yeah, they did a lot of transfers.
Oregon State was pretty decent. And they're going into the same system. They're just changing uniforms. So I'm going to think that they're going to be a little bit better than we anticipate. So let's talk Illinois, Nebraska at Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. I guess I go with Nebraska just because they're at home.
I'm going to say Nebraska as well, but to me it's a toss-up. Because
they beat Illinois there last year, didn't they?
Yeah, could have. I just don't know what this Raiola kid's going to look like. He could be a world beater, or he could just be one of those like they've had in the last 5-6 years. Brag him up, and he's the turnover machine.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to live up to expectations.
Can't make it through the first 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would go Nebraska, but I'd say
we got Floyd Rosedale down there up for grabs. This will be the fair catch game.
Well, let's hit a couple others for USC, Michigan.
Only because it's in Michigan, I'm going to go with Michigan.
Yeah,
close.
That
game.
one I would probably give to Michigan, yeah, because USC doesn't play defense. I would agree.
It's too bad that wasn't on the 21st of November instead of the 21st of September.
Yeah,
I'd say for sure.
As you say, this is the pattern that we're seeing. Is
yes,
the West Coast new entrants are playing their East Coast times early in the season.
Right.
So then let's drop down here to Iowa, Minnesota at Minnesota. I think everybody.
Iowa's getting that one back.
With it wasn't a fair catch T-shirt on, and they should wave their hands.
Iowa's getting that pig back. I
Oh,
I 100% no doubt in my mind that one's coming home.
yeah, should have stayed home.
Yep.
But the powers that be decided that they didn't like the fact that old Skippy was getting beat all the time, so they figured they could throw him a bone.
Old Skippy.
All right. Yeah. Skippy, Peppy, whatever. He's got too much energy for me. All right. Next week, the September 27th, 28th week. Looks like on the 27th, we have a Friday night game, Rutgers and Washington. Probably not a game that I would spend my time watching.
No, if it's on and I'm bored, I'll watch it, but I'm not going to look for it.
But it is a late game for the West Coast team coming to the East Coast, so I will give the advantage to Rutgers anyway.
That's probably the farthest trip. Wouldn't that be the farthest trip that anybody would have to make in the Big Ten? Washington to New Jersey?
Probably. Yeah, I would say so.
Hopefully Washington doesn't have
what
any
else?
jet lag that night.
Wisconsin, USC.
Yeah, that was my highlighted game for the week. Again, USC home game.
Yeah, I would have to say I'm not sold on Wisconsin yet.
I think they'll be better than last year.
Yeah, and I just don't understand why all of these national pundits go out there and they're like, "Oh, well, we're going to rank these coaches," and you're putting coaches that have never coached in the Big Ten ahead of a guy that's coached there for 25 years. Wisconsin, Luke Fickell is he's a better coach than Hayden Fry or than Kirk Ferentz. Really? Kirk beat him pretty decently last year, and
based on
we had no offense. And we had no offense. So I disagree with a lot of those rankings. Nebraska, Purdue, that's Purdue's homecoming. Illinois, Penn State, that's Penn State's homecoming. And then we've got to talk a little bit about this Minnesota, Michigan. That's the Little Brown Jug. At Michigan,
when was the last time Minnesota beat Michigan?
2013, maybe.
It's been a long enough time to know that Michigan's probably going to win that one again. I wouldn't bet the house on Minnesota, that's for sure.
And it's in Ann Arbor.
Right.
The nod there.
It'd be interesting to see Oregon, what the spread is on that one.
Yeah. Oregon, UCLA, that's not going to be close.
I got Oregon.
Maryland, Indiana might be an interesting game to watch. And then
I don't know that it's really going to make a whole lot of difference when it comes to schedule or for the standings.
No. And the nearby weeks are Iowa, Northwestern. Move on to the week of October 4th and 5th, the weekend that I will be in Germany.
Yes,
Iowa and Ohio State is the highlight.
Yes.
Michigan,
Washington will be a nice game.
That's literally the
rematch.
Which one?
USC actually going Washington. To play in Minnesota is kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's still October 5th. It's still fairly warm.
Yeah, it's nice out still.
And you've got UCLA going to Beaver Stadium as well. That's probably going to be a rainy day. It's always rainy.
Could be.
I think Rutgers, Nebraska could be a very good game.
For 15th place?
Yeah. Maybe. Obviously, Iowa, Ohio State is the
key game. My book.
We'll skip talking about a prediction on that. And we cover Iowa in depth. What are you thinking here? Let's do Michigan, Washington. At Washington.
Michigan all day.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably Michigan by 3 touchdowns.
Unfortunately, I think Ohio State's going to take Iowa out. I just think Ohio State's just that good, but I think it'll be a closer game than what people think. I think Iowa's defense is they're legit. Maybe Ohio State will win 24, Iowa like 10. But I think it'll be closer.
It won't be like the last time. What other game do you want to touch? USC, Minnesota, maybe?
I think Penn State wins there against UCLA.
Yeah.
I think USC beats Minnesota, even if it's in Minnesota. I just think there's a talent level difference there.
Yeah.
Other than that, the rest of the Michigan State, Oregon, I don't care.
Oregon's going to win that. And the rest of them are Indiana, Northwestern,
Nebraska, and Rutgers. Yeah, whatever. Who cares?
Next week, October 11th, we have Penn State, USC.
That's a nice
State,
game,
Oregon.
Right? That's the key game right there. That is the number one game of the weekend for the Big Ten.
Washington and Iowa.
Yeah, Washington makes a trip to Iowa. I don't know, has Washington ever played at Iowa?
I don't think so.
I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure that they have. I know that Iowa's played Washington several times in the Pasadena. Not going well for Iowa, but maybe we can get them back at home.
And then this Friday night, Northwestern Maryland game might not.
I like what Northwestern's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just taking Maryland because I just think they're going to be that little bit better.
I'm actually going to take Northwestern in that. I'm just not sold on Maryland. They're going to be breaking
Minnesota, UCLA. Well. That's a battle for like 9th.
Yeah, 12 maybe.
12, yeah, maybe.
Purdue, Illinois. Purdue, Illinois would probably be a pretty entertaining.
It'll be a competitive game. May not be the most eye-pleasing, but it'll be fun to watch.
I think Wisconsin and Rutgers would be an interesting game too.
Why would they play in the Rose Bowl?
I don't know.
I don't think they do. I think that's a misprint.
Yeah, because UCLA and Minnesota's playing in the Rose Bowl. Yeah. I'd say it's in Piscataway.
I'd say that
and then
it's
your
at Piscataway, yeah.
Yeah, value teams are Indiana, Michigan State, and so we go to the week of October 18th, 19th.
Yep.
Key games in this are that's kind of a dud. That's a dud week.
Dud week. I think Iowa beats Michigan State. I think Oregon over Purdue, Michigan over Illinois. That'll be a closer game than what people think. Illinois always plays Michigan tough. I don't know why. They just do. USC, Maryland. USC actually has to travel across the United States.
Mm-hmm. Might give Maryland a little bit of an advantage, but
UCLA has to play across the United States. Maybe they can ride together.
Rutgers will be UCLA.
Might.
I think Nebraska beat Indiana in Bloomington. Honestly, I think this Northwestern toss at me. Because really, you're playing in a small stadium at Northwestern. So no home field advantage there. Not even your real stadium. So I'm going to say the toss-up, I'd give the advantage probably to and then the buys that week are Minnesota, Ohio State, Penn State, Washington. And we go to the second to last week, or no. Got 3 more weeks to go. October 25th and 26th. Games of the week here. Penn State, Wisconsin.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Ohio State. Maryland and Minnesota. Northwestern travels to Iowa. Michigan State being a rivalry game, but again, we don't know where that's going to end up because we don't know. There was a lot of turnover for both teams, so difficult to pull that one. Obviously, the big one is
Penn State, Wisconsin. To me, is the big one, and then Nebraska at Ohio State's another one.
Yeah, those will be the games that will go in deciding. Well, we don't even really have divisions anymore, do we?
No.
It's going to take off the team. So, yeah, it's going to go into deciding who might be in contention for a 12-team playoff spot.
Good.
So, I don't think it'll be Wisconsin that's going to be vying for it. That Penn State will be, so we maybe want to be rooting for Wisconsin at that point. I can never root for Nebraska, so Ohio State, they beat Iowa.
Well, I think by that time, I don't think it'll be a question of whether Ohio State makes the playoffs. I think it's just a question of how high up and if they get a bye week or not. Yeah. Their biggest game will come up at the end of the season, other than Oregon.
Right.
Which they play in week 7.
So this is kind of one of those. This is kind of a make it or break it type of week for some teams, I think.
Yeah, you're going to see teams start to either go up or they're really going to start hitting the skids. I just, like you said, this is the make it or break it week, I think, for teams. There's games you have to win if you want to be. There's teams that are going to be in the middle of the pack that are going to either have to ascend or just continue to drop. And this is the week that's going to happen. That doesn't sound right, but that's what it. You know,
November 2nd, Oregon, Michigan,
big game.
Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa.
Big weekend.
Big weekend.
This will be the most fun weekend of the ones so far. I think.
Because I think Minnesota, Illinois is a very well matched up game too.
Bottom of the schedule there, Wisconsin at Iowa. That's another big game. That's going to to me, Iowa really has two games that they have a potential to drop. And I think Ohio State obviously is the first one, and I think Wisconsin has a potential to be the second one. Now, not saying that they wouldn't potentially drop a game to, let's say, Nebraska at the end of the season, but Iowa needs to go 10-2, I think, to even sniff the playoff with the schedule they've got. If they're 9-3, they're not in. Period. End of story. That's my opinion.
I would agree. I'm not as concerned about Nebraska or playing them at home. Or not Nebraska, I'm sorry, Wisconsin, playing them at home. So I have more confidence in Iowa in that one. And again, we'll talk about this in depth on another show. Oregon, Michigan.
Yeah, good game there. That's probably the highlight.
I don't know, man. This is tough because Michigan's playing at home, 100,000 people. It's in November. Oregon traveling east in November. Typically, November is cool and possibly rainy, but Oregon would be used to rain. So I kind of throw this as it's kind of a toss-up game to me. And anytime you have a toss-up, kind of give that slight advantage to the home. So I'm going to give the slight advantage to Michigan on this one, but my head is telling me that Oregon will win.
Yeah, toss-up to me. Really, I agree with what you said with a home team having the advantage. I don't know. This one's so close. I am not sure. I'd have to see, making the prediction now, obviously it may be different when you make the prediction on November the 1st, the day before the game, based on having watched the games and who's hurt and who's not.
Right.
But right now, I guess if I had to choose, I'm going home team. I'm going Michigan.
Yeah, I'm going Michigan, but like I said, my head probably is telling me that Oregon will probably win. But I'm going with my gut. What do you think, Minnesota, Illinois? Well, let's back up. Let's talk Indiana, Michigan State. That's a rivalry game.
Right. I think you got two teams that may be fighting for 5 wins, 6 wins. I'm not even sure that Indiana or Michigan State will even sniff 5 wins. I'm not sure. Man, I don't know. I guess Michigan State if I had to pick. I just don't think Indiana's got much. They've been down.
What about Minnesota, Illinois?
I think both teams are going to lose.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I have no idea. Illinois, maybe.
Yeah, I'm probably going to give the advantage to Illinois since they're at home. But again, by the time we're this late into the season, we're going to know a lot more about these teams. We'll be able to reevaluate that. How about Ohio State, Penn State?
Ohio State
will probably be a whiteout.
Yeah, I still going to go Ohio State just based on track record of how they've played Penn State in the past.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go Penn State.
That would be an upset.
I feel like this is going to be their whiteout game. I really do.
Nebraska,
and they're usually
UCLA.
jacked up for it. Again, not knowing much about this QB at Nebraska, I don't, and what UCLA is going to have. I know UCLA is going to be down, but I'm just not sold on Nebraska. People are. So I'll give the advantage to Nebraska because UCLA has to come to Lincoln in November, but I'm not going to give them much of an advantage. We've seen Nebraska struggle against Georgia State. So
I hate to even predict one of those. I'm going to go Wisconsin, Iowa. I'm just going to say, just because Iowa's at home, and I could see this game going either way, I'm going to take Iowa to win. But I would not be surprised if Wisconsin came out of there with a 15-13 win.
No. And then the next week, you have a Iowa team flying west on a shortened week, playing
after having played Wisconsin.
Yeah, after having played Wisconsin. Start at 8 o'clock start at the Rose Bowl. I still think Iowa is the better team and will win that game. It'll be their first win out west in a while, other than the Holiday Bowl against USC.
I think Iowa, you're right. I think Iowa is the better team. Short week after a big game on the road, especially flying halfway across the country or more.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do Iowa any favors on this one.
It's going to depend on the time on this Wisconsin-Iowa game, too. Is it
Well, let's hope it's an 11 o'clock start then.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Other than that, there's nothing that really stands out in this group of games that has
Washington, Penn State. The only reason I say that one is because that's one of the few times that you see a West Coast team travel across the country in November.
Right.
And I think the 16th would be the last one. And I believe Oregon plays at Penn State on the 16th.
Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin. Okay.
So let's move on to that.
And that's the last time you see, and only time you see.
Yeah, because this is where we started that. We really noticed that pattern of UCLA playing on a West Coast team, Nebraska going to a West Coast team, Oregon not doing that. But
that'll be the only time.
Where is Washington? Yeah, yes, there's 3 of the 4.
USC's right there.
Okay, yeah. So 3 out of the 4 are going to play in their own time zone. The other one, the cream of the crop, is going to go to Madison, and that's the latest you'll see. Which, yeah, you're right. I looked at it wrong. Oregon was the one that got kind of shafted because they're going to be the best.
Well, I'm going to go through my top 5 toughest schedules at the end.
Okay. Well, let's get through this next 2 weeks, and then you can go through that, and then we'll get ready to wrap this up. We're running
Iowa at Maryland. Ooh. That one jumps out at me.
Iowa, Maryland, at Maryland.
Yeah.
Iowa has. Have they ever lost?
Traditionally, Iowa's taken care of Maryland pretty decent.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go Iowa there, but having gone to UCLA the week before, didn't know, was Iowa at UCLA the week before?
Yes. No, we had a bye week.
Okay, and then a bye week. Okay, well, that's good that they had a bye week instead of going from UCLA to Maryland with a stop in the middle.
And Maryland had Rutgers. To me, the games that stand out in this group: Wisconsin, Nebraska.
Yeah.
And Iowa, Maryland.
Yeah, kind of a.
I mean, obviously, UCLA, USC is
not a great week.
Is a rivalry.
Yeah,
there's a couple of dud weeks in here with it.
But that's right there in their own backyard. I mean, that neither one of them have to travel anything but other than by bus.
Yeah, and then your other 2 Pac-12 teams are bye weeks that week.
Right.
And then we move to the final week. And we have some rivalry games. Minnesota, Wisconsin was moved up to Black Friday, which is a little aggravating.
I'll take Wisconsin in that one.
Yeah. Nebraska, Iowa in prime time on NBC.
This is going to be there's going to be a lot on the line here in this game, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's
So
going to depend on what we've seen from Nebraska at that point. Yeah, but I would take Iowa as well.
Here's kind of an interesting thing. Have you noticed that UCLA and USC end the season on non-conference games, and that is a rarity for the Big Ten? When was the last time you saw a Big Ten team end their season in a non-conference game?
Well, typically USC ends their season against Notre Dame, and that's a protected rival.
And that may continue going forward, but usually you don't see
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it too. I don't care. I'm just saying that you don't see too many times that Big Ten teams get to end the season outside of conference.
Right.
But, you're going to see UCLA play Fresno State out of conference.
Yeah.
But you have to have it because you can't have oddities. You can't have odd. If one team out of the Big Ten is going to play out of conference, either one team's going to have to sit out that week or they're going to have to play it out of conference. Because it's just the way the odds and evens works out.
All right. So this last week we've got Minnesota, Wisconsin, all Bunyan's Axe.
Friday game.
You said Wisconsin.
Yep.
Nebraska,
also
Iowa.
Friday game, Iowa, Nebraska.
We both said
Prime
Iowa.
time, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, 7:30. Got to go Hawks there.
6:30 Central.
Yeah.
Michigan, Ohio State game.
Big game of the week. Always big game of the year, actually.
It's in Columbus this year, so
I'm going Ohio State. I think Ohio State beats Michigan again. I think Michigan loses to Ohio State for the first time in 3 years.
Yeah, I would agree. Illinois Northwestern is the Land Grant Trophy.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. That one's
at Wrigley Field.
Northwestern.
Yeah.
I just flipped a coin in my head.
Maryland, Penn State, I'm not even going to worry about. Purdue, Indiana for the Old Open Bucket. I'd say probably Purdue.
Purdue
got a better offense.
Agreed, Purdue.
Then
Oregon, Washington.
Oregon.
Yeah, got to go Oregon there.
And then Notre Dame, USC.
I don't know about Notre Dame. Every year they tell everybody they're going to be great, and then they just end up losing a game they shouldn't.
I feel like Notre Dame's probably a better team. I feel like USC is probably a 7-5 team, maybe an 8-4.
It is in LA.
Yeah, I don't think they're a playoff caliber team.
So you're taking Notre Dame?
Yes. I hate to.
I'm going to take UCLA or USC because I can't stand Notre Dame.
Well, I know. It pains me to pick them, but I go with what I think is right. So that covers the schedule. Then you've got the December 7th is the Big Ten championship. At this point in time, probably based on our predictions, we're probably looking at Ohio State, Oregon.
Yeah.
Or Penn State, Oregon, or Penn State, Ohio State.
I think everybody knows who the top 10 or top teams are in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State probably are your top 4.
Yeah. I'd say
USC would be 5th.
5 or 6.
Yeah. So
I don't know. Iowa might be better than USC.
We'll see. So I did go through the schedule, and I listed the top 5 toughest schedules, and I will do them in reverse order. And this is how I see them. Other people may see them differently, and I will justify my ranking with where they're at and who they play, that kind of thing. So we got number 5, Wisconsin. And the reason is because they're at USC, they're at Iowa, their home games are Oregon and Penn State. Okay, that's why I put them fifth. Fourth, Michigan. They are at OSU this year, Ohio State. They're at Washington, and they are home to USC, and they are home to Oregon. Kind of tough. Not easy. Washington to be 3. And the reason is because they're at Iowa, they're at Penn State, and they're at Oregon. And their home games are Michigan and USC. Ooh, that's a tough schedule. That's a gauntlet. But they're not even the... Wait, they are number 2. I got that backwards. They're number 2. Number 3 is Ohio State. I reversed them after I put them in order here. Ohio State is number 3 instead of Washington. We'll just put Washington at number 2. The reason I got Ohio State number 3 is because they play Oregon and Penn State on the road, but they have Iowa and Michigan at home. I think Washington has a little tougher schedule, so we'll put them at 2. Number 1 schedule, toughest to me, Oregon. At Michigan, at Wisconsin, at UCLA, home Ohio State. You could probably put Washington up there too, close, because Washington, they got a tough one.
But like we said, we think from what we've seen and what we've talked, Washington and UCLA are going to be bottom tier, fighting for that 15, 16, 17, 18 spot. So, I get some of it, but
it still doesn't take away from the fact that they have to play who they have to play.
Yeah. And it could be a situation where as the season progresses, they surprise us. And they are better than we thought. Or teams that we think are going to be good are not as good as they thought.
Yeah.
It's just, we're speculating on, we're basing this off of what's on paper.
In June.
They don't play the games on paper. Yeah.
Right.
And they don't play the games on paper.
Right.
We don't have any depth charts. We haven't had any first looks. We'll get more of that when the BIG10 goes out here in the next month and a half, and starts going to all these. They take the road trip to all the spring or the summer camps. We'll start to get a better idea of what to expect. Because I trust a lot of the analysis that the BIG10 crew does, because they're smart individuals and they're usually pretty spot on. Granted, they've been off on the Iowa offense the last couple of years, but they've definitely been spot on defense. Let's see what they have to say about some of these teams that we really don't know much about. We don't know much about Oregon or Washington or UCLA or USC other than what we've seen in the past. Well, they're not going to be in the Big 12 or Pac-12 anymore. You're coming to 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of conference where you're not seeing certain styles of offense for quite a long time, and you have to adjust, and you don't have a month and a half to do it.
It's a lack of familiarity with each team. And each team, they're going to have to adjust to everybody except for the teams that they've played already.
Right.
Like, let's say Oregon has already played USC and Washington.
Well, they're still going to have to adjust, because you don't know these new coaches at Oregon State, because Oregon's got to play them. At Washington, you don't know what they're going to bring, what type of offense they're bringing. So that's a lack of familiarity.
There's a lot of question marks going forward as far as depth charts, like you talked about, familiarity with teams, as you talked about. It's just, we did this today on June 9th. This could change. Ask me in July 9th. It may not be the same.
We maybe revisit this after the BIG10 road trip, and we've had a chance to watch each of those teams. And we come back and say, I think based on what I saw,
what we could do,
be a better team than we thought.
Right. We could do a WNL for each team. Go down through each one of them schedule and say, okay, here's a W, here's an L, and then at the end we figure out whose record is what, and then we have to put them in the rankings and find out who's number 1 and who's number 18.
That's something we could do offline, and then bring that up next week and kind of go over it.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to.
I can have you send me yours, and I'll do mine, and I'll drop it into a sheet. We can share it on the screen then, now that we're doing the video.
We could do that. That would work. I don't know, Pete, what do you think? You guys want to do that? You want me to do that just to see if we're even remotely close or if we're just way off? Let us know in the comments down below. Give us a thumbs up and a like on YouTube, and we can continue to do this. It helps us out and helps the analytics of the YouTube. So we don't know a lot about it. This is our first venture into YouTube, but from what I've seen on other YouTube videos, thumbs up and like, that seems to help. So subscribe. Yes, please subscribe. Yeah,
absolutely. And we are very, very open to feedback and very much wanting to grow our base from what we're at.
Constructive
We've
feedback.
Done 20 episodes. Yeah. Well, if you
I
want
don't
to
need
call
hear
us a
that
bunch
you
of
suck.
jerks, that's, hey, if you want to say that we suck and, say we suck, tell us what we suck at, and allow us to give it an opportunity to remediate
Defend
that
ourselves.
and make that better.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to defend ourselves, just to fix it. Say, oh, you guys talk about things too long. Okay, we'll shorten it up. Whatever. We're open for that. So we're all Hawk fans in the end, and we should just support each other and listen to others' opinions on what they think. Your opinion may not agree with ours may not agree with yours, but that's the beauty of being a Hawkeye fan, is we can disagree and still be brothers.
Very well said.
As always, we will keep you updated on the social media. This will still also be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as an audio only. And we will set up our YouTube channel and get this posted out there within the next couple of days. And you should start seeing us on YouTube. And yes, one of the comments can be, you do have a face for radio. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, well, we have what we have, and then we can't change it.
Yeah, I could put some filters on it and make myself look different, but why? You either like me for who I am or you don't. Doesn't matter to me any. Anyway, on that, like I said, keep up on social media: X, Twitter, Facebook, Linktree, Apple Podcasts. There is another one I can't remember. Overcast, I believe, is on there now, and I might be a third or fourth medium that we're on now that has finally accepted us. So check us out wherever you want, and by all means, leave us some feedback. Tell us what you like, don't like, and we'll see what we can do. And with that, we'll wrap it up for this week and finish it with the ever popular Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.